Imagine you've done everything right. You've worked on your money mindset. You've done the inner work, the journaling, the healing, and yet your bank account still doesn't reflect any of it. At some point or another, you've probably asked, why does money feel so hard? Why do I know what I should do but still can't seem to do it? You've tried affirmations, abundance, mindset work, even therapy, but here's what most people miss. Mindset without skill set is half the equation. My guest today, Megan Hale, learned this the hard way. She was a trained therapist who knew every psychological trick in the book and still couldn't get her money to work. It wasn't until she was 1 month away from giving birth to her second child, with her military husband about to deploy for 6 months, that she opened a spreadsheet for the very first time and asked herself, what do I actually need my money to do for me? That one question, asked from the most chaotic season of her life, changed everything. In this episode, Megan shares the framework she built from that moment, how she doubled her revenue, paid off $30,000 in debt, and built a fintech company designed to help women entrepreneurs do the same. If you've ever felt like you're chasing someone else's definition of financial success, this episode is for you.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
Welcome, Megan, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I can't wait to be here and have a great conversation.
Back at you. I'll start, as I always do, with the question, Megan, what was money like in your family growing up?
Oh, this is such a juicy question. I think that money always equated stability and security in my family. And I would say that, like most households, my parents had different ideas around what was the right thing to do with money, especially when it comes to doing like the smart, wise, responsible thing. And I would also say that I think as in most families, we have financial figures that are really important and influential for us. For me, my paternal grandmother was a huge financial role model for me.
Wow.
And it's actually taken some time to really suss out what I wanted to move forward with from what she's taught me and what I wanted to leave behind. Because she had very strong opinions on debt. She had very strong opinions on investing. She had very strong opinions on spending, which worked out really, really well for her and what she wanted money to look and feel like for her. But I really had to do my own work of figuring out what those looked like for me.
Thanks for sharing that. And I wonder if you could say a little bit. I'm so used to my guests, my clients, Megan, saying, I didn't really get messages. I saw some things, but money was never talked about. So I'm intrigued by what you said about your paternal grandmother. How was this communicated? Did she actually say?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I remember there were moments when my parents were in debt and they had to ask for a loan. And just the way that she received that, the way that she talked to them about, she saw that as being very irresponsible of them. And so she had very, very strong opinions about that. And so I remember those memories very, very clearly. But also going to her house, I remember she had this big old ledger. And she was the one that kept all the numbers, all the accounts. And so she was modeling at a very young age just the importance of knowing your numbers, of keeping track of everything. She was the financial leader in her household, and she was a self-made woman. So she paid for her own house. She did all of these things in a historical time when that wasn't normal for a woman to do. And so she taught me so many things just from the things that I heard her say, but also the things that I watched her practice.
You're very lucky. Because
Yes.
people don't have a role model like that, especially around money.
Yeah.
It's really generally a taboo subject. So this is going to be a broad question. Then we'll get more specific. But how did that impact you? I mean, at a relatively young age?
I think money was always something that was really important for everyone in my family. I think it was important in different ways. I think for my parents, pursuing more money equated to more happiness and more fulfillment. And so I definitely internalized that.
Hmm.
Whereas my grandmother saw more money as a way of creating independence and options for yourself and safety and security. But I didn't really see money bring her a whole lot of joy besides saving it as much as possible. So she never really spent a lot of money on herself. And my parents did spend money on themselves. And so there was a lot of conflict because of that, because, their value set was different. And I do remember from the very young age of knowing that I wanted money to do all of those things for me. I wanted it to create more joy, more fulfillment, more happiness, more peace in a household. Because I think, financial stress can absolutely impact marriages and families. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I also knew that money was going to be a sense of security and independence and options. So I kind of have all of it as part of my personal relationship with money.
Love that. There is a little question in the back of my head. What what were the little negative impacts, or were there any? 'Cause-
I think the biggest negative impacts really started to show up in my journey of entrepreneurship, mostly because I had to take on business debt to start my business, as most small business owners do. Like, even if you're bootstrapping it, usually our access to capital is going to come through forms of credit. And so I had credit cards to get the support that I needed to get, my companies off the ground. And I remember in the early stages when I was just starting to do my own money healing work, the reality that I was in business debt felt very heavy. And I had so much shame around it because there was such this strong message from my grandmother that being in debt was wrong. It was irresponsible. It was like the devil, like you don't want to owe anybody anything, like very, very strong messages. And so here I was feeling like a financial failure in many ways, not realizing that the way that an entrepreneur needs to think about debt is very different than how we need to think about consumer debt. And when I could see that, the weight that I was carrying started to lift. And I also did pay off that debt. So there was like both of those things, like wanting to be debt free, but also starting to renegotiate what my perception of debt really was. And that work has really served me over and over and over again as I've continued to grow my businesses. Because there's been times I need to take on debt. Right. But I see
Yeah.
debt as a tool, something that I can leverage in order to get to that next step, while also needing to have a plan to get that debt paid off and so on.
That's a great message. I'm looking forward to exploring it, Megan. And you're reminding me, so many clients back when mortgage rates were 2 to 3%, very low.
Gosh, can we please
I
go
would
back there?
meet them, and they'd be so proud that they don't have a mortgage.
Yeah.
And I'd say, mortgage debt is good debt. It's,
Yeah.
and it enables you to really build equity in a home as you're paying it back. And so many people like you grow up with debt being like the big bad wolf, and
Yes.
no matter what kind of debt it is, shy away. So it's
Yes.
such an important message.
It really, really is.
So you're giving me a great jumping off point, because this podcast is geared towards women in a life transition. It sounds like you yourself went through one as you moved towards entrepreneurship. So can you, Megan, share some of that journey and what your decision-making process was, both financially and otherwise?
So I think I have a very maybe odd story in that sense. From the time I was 15 and sitting in my first Psych 101 class, I knew that I wanted to help people. And I was fascinated by the world of psychology, that there is this whole field dedicated to helping us live happier, healthier lives. And so I knew from a young age that I wanted to become a therapist. This was also the first time that I had experienced therapy, because I went through depression and anxiety as a teenager. And I remember the first time I went to a therapy session, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what you get to do for a living. Like you get to help people. And so I was the one, I think it's a luck, honestly, of knowing that I wanted to go into that career field at such a young age. And so I knew from the very start that I wanted to go through graduate school, open a private practice, and that was my dream. What I didn't foresee is that when I opened a private practice, I was also becoming an entrepreneur. And I don't know why I didn't see those two at first, but becoming a business owner was one of the most fulfilling and also challenging journeys of my life. And I had to figure out all these different skills. But I also knew that I had married a military pilot before I opened this practice. And I was in a weird situation where I knew I was going to have to close that practice like just a year and a half later because we were going to be moving to a new duty station. And so it was around that time when I started getting curious of like, I don't know if I can open a private practice every 3 years moving with the military. It sounds like a lot of work. And so that's when I found the world of coaching, of where I could really take my background of skills and education into this new application. And so I made the shift from therapy to coaching in 2015. And I've been on that trajectory ever since. And there's been, I mean, so many highs and lows over the past decade of learning to grow an online business. I've started my second company since then. I'm now a fintech founder of a SaaS platform called Dream Money, where we're really helping small business owners build out sustainable revenue plans and understand cash flow management. But there's been so many micro journeys in the larger macro journey, and I'm happy to talk about any of those. But I didn't really know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of the thing that found me, so to speak, just by following my heart and wanting to help people.
So much comes up when you say that. I have a friend who wrote a book geared towards therapists about money, about how you go through training, you go through graduate school, and there's never a discussion of how should you price your services.
One single training.
Nothing, like no conversation about it. And everybody comes with their own money stories, their own grandmothers or parents, and what was modeled for them. And she just felt like she really needed to be a resource for conversations, let alone conversations you as a therapist or you as a coach might have with your clients about money.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like not a talked about subject. But knowing who our listeners are, I'd love you to sort of pick maybe one story or two about one of your micro journeys that might help the women who are listening know that there's always an other side.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a couple of stories come to mind. One of the most pivotal times of my entrepreneurial journey was really in 2018, or actually 2017, late 2017. I had a 1.5-year-old at the time, and I was getting ready to have my second baby. And I was about a month shy from giving birth to him when I found out that my husband was going to be deploying for 6 months, just 3 weeks after we had him.
Hmm.
And I was in this point in my business where I had just started to gain some momentum. And I'm such a big dreamer. And I was looking at that next year, knowing I was going to have so much on my shoulders in my personal life, having 2 under 2 for at least 6 months while my partner was away, wondering, one, how am I going to handle all that? But also, what does this look like for my business and my dreams this next year? Because I knew that I had some momentum behind me, but I knew that business could not look like usual the next year. It was going to have to be very, very pared back, very, very scaled down. But I also still had big dreams of being able to double my revenue and being able to reach some financial milestones, like paying off that $30K in business debt that felt so heavy at the time. And it just so happened to be the right obstacle of constraint. And I think oftentimes when we are in a life season where maybe we have the least amount of support or the least amount of resources, or in my case, the least amount of sleep that I was getting with the two little ones, it actually forces us to get really creative of like, well, what could happen? What could I make possible with the resources that I have available? And that's when I opened a spreadsheet for the very first time. And I started getting really honest with my money. What do I need my money to do for me and my business for me to feel supported this next year? And up until that point, I had been pursuing other people's definitions of financial success and freedom and fulfillment, never stopping to question what is my definition of those things and how much do I truly need in order to feel supported by money. And so what ended up happening is that I created these 3 specific financial goals for myself, which I called good, better, and best. My good goal is like, what's the bare minimum I need for this next year just to be able to not worry about my business and go on a maternity leave and feel financially supported with everything I was going to have on my shoulders? And if I could do that, what would be even better? Well, being something better would be paying off half of that business debt that would be huge because I had been carrying it for 3 years and had not been able to make a single step of progress. And then what would be best would be to pay it off in full within the next calendar year. So $30,000 in a calendar year. And it felt like I was in a pipe dream at the time. Like, how in the world am I going to do this? But it ended up being the right question because when I looked at how much time I really wanted to work that next year and how much money I really needed to make to reach my goals, it forced me to get creative in ways that I never had before. And so what I ended up doing is I created a 12-month program that allowed me to work very, very minimally, that allowed me to not only double my revenue that next year, not only double my take home pay, because those are two very different numbers, as you know, and also pay off 30K in business debt in one calendar year. And that completely changed the trajectory of my business. And so that's really the foundation for what Dream Money has become today. It's what I teach other people how to do, really understanding their good, better, best goals and their revenue plan to reach them and all of those things. But so much money healing work happened for me that next year because for the first time ever, I had 12 full months of revenue secured and coming in. And because money was the most consistent thing in my life that year, because I can promise you everything else was very chaotic, it really allowed me to reflect on why I wasn't feeling more secure with money. And so I would sit down every day and look at my spreadsheet that I had created, and money hadn't changed, but what I was bringing to the money conversation was. So some days I noticed I would feel anxious. Where was that anxiety coming from? It wasn't coming from money. So what was I projecting onto money that was creating that anxiety for me? Some days I would sit down and I would feel avoidant. I didn't want to look at the money, even though nothing had changed. I knew the numbers are going to stay the exact same. I was like, why do I feel avoidant? What am I scared of looking at? What am I scared of feeling or noticing or what have you, right? But that year, I met with my money every single day. And some days it would be for 5 minutes. Some days I would spend 2 hours just sitting there until I could start building nervous system regulation and get really grounded and centered. And that practice changed my whole perspective on money. That's when I started realizing the importance of my grandmother's stories, the importance of my parents' money stories. Like all of these things started to show up for me just by simply having that daily practice. And so 2018 was a pivotal year in so many ways, not only from a business trajectory shift, but also my personal relationship with money. And it all came from having so many obstacles, or what felt like at the time, placed in front of me where I had to do something differently. And so I think for all of us who are going through a different life season, it can be really easy for us to feel like the woe is me because it feels like things are getting taken away or we're being asked to rise in ways that we don't know if we can yet, right? Our life sometimes feels bigger than we can even handle. But what I know, because I've lived it several times now, because this is just one micro journey, is those times are often the bearers of the greatest gifts.
You said so many important things there, Megan. The last one that you said, and I had a quote from a group I was involved with yesterday, and I'm going to forget the exact quote, but yes, we have to push against it's when we're really being challenged that we grow and recreate, and not that it's comfortable to go through it in the moment,
No,
but it's a requirement for true growth.
absolutely.
And another thing that you implied was, which someone said to me and really stuck with me, is money is the one thing that can be counted.
Yeah.
And so we use it as a metric for the things that can't be counted. I'm feeling anxious. Must be about my money. I'm feeling happy. It must be because I signed that new client. Because these are measurable things. And so we place so much import on the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really attempting to measure something else, whether it's life satisfaction, relationships, everything that's truly important to us that can't be as easily measured. So it often falls to our money to, be these things that money at the end of the day really can't be.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So please share with us what your new passion project is. I don't actually know how new it is, but
Yeah, well, so Dream Money is my current passion. We have some really, really ambitious goals for this company. Mainly, Dream Money is a strategic revenue planning platform for small business owners. And our goal is one, to close the gender earning gap for women entrepreneurs in particular, because there's a huge, huge discrepancy, but also to make small business financial knowledge more accessible to people, not only from a pricing perspective, but from how we talk about money, because I think money has a lot of jargon by design to keep it confusing, to keep it more elite. And our work here at Dream Money is to really make the way we talk about money very easy to understand, very intuitive. And we want more women in particular to feel more confident when it comes to money, more savvy with their money, and to also feel safe when it comes to learning about money, moving money, experiencing money, meeting with their money, all of those things. And so our goal with Dream Money is we want to be a $100 million company. And we want to serve as many small business owners as we can to really help them understand their numbers and their revenue plan for how they're going to bring their biggest dreams to life, because it is Dream Money after all. But Dream also stands for deliberate, reliable, easeful, abundant, meaningful money. And so we're not just helping small business owners step into just any type of money, but a very intentional and specific type of money that feels the way that you want it to feel. And so it's wild to me to think that we're building this huge software company from 3 ugly spreadsheets that I created back in 2017 when I was like, how am I going to do all this? But I think, I've taught it to so many people over the years and just refined that process and spreadsheets over and over and over again. And so if you would have told 15-year-old me, who thinks that she's going to be this therapist, which I did become, but that she was going to be helping people with their numbers and building this software company, I'd be like, okay, okay, sounds good. But yeah, I can totally see how all the dots connect looking back. And I'm really excited for just the ahas, the shifts, the increase in revenue that business owners are going to create with our platform.
So can you give us a little sneak peek? You talked about your own experience of asking yourself, what would be your definition of success? So you did share that. Anything else you can share, both about what these spreadsheets are, as well as what's the model? Is it a membership? Is it a work?
Absolutely. So one of the most important things when it comes to goal setting is making sure you're really taking a holistic bird's eye view of what your financial needs really are. Most of the time, especially working with entrepreneurs, we find that they're usually tuned into a couple of key numbers, but then they're not zooming out to look at the whole financial picture. And so inside Dream Money, we really focus on 7 key financial needs that we are funding for each of our users. The most basic ones are making sure your personal pay is covered. That's one of the number one needs that entrepreneurs are aware of. The second one is making sure your business expenses are covered, also a very foundational need. We also want to make sure that your taxes are covered, because we are going to have to pay those. So we need to make sure we're setting aside enough for taxes. And we also want to make sure we're earning enough to set aside for business savings. And so when it comes to that abundance, inside the Dream Money acronym, what most people want to feel is that there's more than enough money, right? And so we actually have to ask our businesses to generate more than enough money. So how much do we really need to be sitting aside in business savings? We also want to make sure that we have enough money to fund our team, because our team is probably going to be one of the most expensive expenses that we have, especially if we care about paying people well and attracting top talent. We also want to be able to reinvest back into our businesses every single year in order to continue to create growth. And this is also a financial need that I see a lot of entrepreneurs overlook. And so when it comes time to make an investment in their businesses, whether it's taking a program, joining a mastermind, going to a conference, going on a retreat, taking another certification, whatever that might look like, we're like, where is that money going to come from? And so we actually need to ask our businesses to set aside funds to further our growth. And then the last financial need is all around having a sustainable give back. I think it's really, really important that we are asking our businesses to give sustainably to causes and organizations that we care about, because when we are able to do that, we see the direct correlation between every single dollar that walks through our door and the larger ripple effect that it can have in the world. And so when we're thinking about what does a good, better, best goal look like? Well, those 3 goals are always going to take those 7 key needs into account, always. So we have fancy calculators that take your financial needs and we do the calculations for you. But your better and your best are when we're really starting to fund your financial dreams. So what are the financial dreams that you have that are going to create more joy, more fulfillment, more security, whatever that might look like for you? And it's this step that's in particular that it's so easy for other people's ideas to come in of like what they think, right, you should be doing. And so this is really our opportunity to really tune in of what is my personal definition of financial success in this season. And so just the goal setting framework alone is huge for really helping you get clear on your numbers. But that's really just the first step. Because once we know where we're trying to get your business from a financial standpoint, now it's time for us to map out the game plan for how you're going to bring those numbers to life. And that's when we really go into sustainable revenue planning. Do you even have a business model that can generate these numbers? That's question number one. It's either going to be a yes or a no, because our system calculates that for you too. But the second question we need to ask is your plan sustainable for you to implement and execute? Because entrepreneurs are notoriously creative. They are visionaries. They have all the ideas. And it's very easy for us to have complicated revenue strategies that are going to lead to burnout, or they're going to lead to not so great implementation because we're trying to take on too much. And there's only just so much of us or so much of us and our team. And so we really weave in sustainable business design into this as well, because that has a huge impact on how your business and money feel, how hard you're working, or how complicated you're making it to be to generate your desired revenue. And so that's really the second step for our users, is really understanding what their strategy is. And then we go into cash flow management. So as the money's coming in, how do you make sure it's funding those 7 key needs? And so we help our users create key financial systems that helps them discern and direct their money where they want it to go. And that's so huge for building financial confidence. I think the thing that I've learned coming from a therapist, there's such a huge importance on money mindset. And I believe in that fully. And also, we cannot build financial confidence without financial skill set. So we need mindset and skill set together. And when we combine those two things, that's what's going to create that sense of financial safety for you, like that you know what's going on and you have an empowered relationship with money.
Yeah, so very true. And, I see in the work that I do with clients as well that both are important. Often I find myself more attracted to the mindset work sometimes. And yet, just as you're saying, Megan, without actual knowledge of the numbers and a comfort level, the numbers, all the mindset work in the world, if you're just money avoidant, it's not going to help.
That's the thing that I learned. So in 2018, when I was sitting down with my money every single day, I've done money mindset work leading up to that year. And if you tell a therapist that she needs to do mindset work, I'm going to go and do all the inner child healing. I'm going to go through all family of origin issues. I know how to do all of that, but it still wasn't translating into my bank account because I was missing some strategic and structural shifts in my business that had to happen alongside this mindset work. And so what I say now to our community is taking a numbers first approach to mindset work is so important. And what I mean by that is when you have real numbers in front of you and you have real emotions coming up, maybe Dream Money is telling you that you need to double your price point for this to be a sustainable offer for you, right? That's going to bring up some feelings for most people, right? And so when we have that awareness, that's the right money mindset work that we need to do that unlocks the next step for us in our business. And so instead of doing not random, it's not totally random, but just inner child work for the sake of doing inner child work, let's do the right work that's going to help you next aligned step for where you are right now in your business.
And is part of your program doing the money mindset work with the clients? How does it work?
Yes. So we have a monthly call for all of our users. It's their opportunity to come and talk about their business, their strategy, their numbers, their margins, how they're feeling around money. And I think that's the most important piece because many of us don't have money positive spaces to connect with other people and have money conversations because it's still so taboo. Still so taboo. And so I have found over the years of just leading these calls, the shifts that are happening of just letting people know that you're not alone. You're not alone because you're feeling anxious about money. Or a lot of times people say, oh, this is a scarcity issue. And they do this thing where they're blaming themselves of I know that it's a mindset issue. It's well, do you have financial scarcity happening in your business right now? Are you in a cash crunch? Because that's real scarcity. we can't bypass real scarcity. We're allowed to have feelings around real scarcity. So it's so helpful just to have that outside perspective to talk through how money is making you feel. And then being able to lean on people who might be further along than you for how they've shifted some of their perspective on money.
So the monthly calls are group calls.
Yeah, for all of our users. So they can come ask me literally anything on our features, on mindset, on strategy, whatever is in the room that day.
And is it mostly women?
We have 100% women right now. And just our ethos as a company is to really elevate more women into more wealth. And so we support any entrepreneur, but we have a very special focus on women, which that's why most 100% of our community is women right now.
I so love that. I actually help facilitate. I've done it twice. I'm about to do it a third time in the fall, workshops for an organization called Invest for Better. And it's all geared towards educating women about money and then using your money to invest in causes that you believe in and companies that you believe in. And Megan, it's so powerful to talk about money with women because women will get together and talk about many things, but money is not generally one of them.
Yes.
So I think one of the first time I facilitated it, we all sort of looked at each other on Zoom and said, wow, we're talking about money together in a group. What a concept.
Yes, but it's very foreign for people. And even so, here's the thing too. Even if you don't feel safe talking yet, which I can promise you that you will build that safety to, to say your own experience with money, even just being in the room as a wallflower and listening to other people talk about money, it creates shifts and change just simply by being present. And so I think that's the beauty of women getting together and talking about this because we have such a relational way of connecting. And we also have such an attuned way of dealing with highly emotional topics. And money is a highly emotional topic. And so we are so well poised to talk about money. Like we have so much skill set already coming into the conversation. But I think that so many of us feel like we've been edged out because it hasn't always been open to us. Like we've been the managers of the household, we've been like the accountants and things like that. But talking about earning money equates to power in our society. Talking about investing money,
which women never talk about.
Yes, which means taking risk, right? Especially financial risk, financial failure, all those things. These are the conversations that we need to be having. Because I think for so long, our society has really groomed women to do the most with the least. And now I think we're moving into a new era where women are really encouraged, like, no, let's actually go for more. And let's see what is possible when we do that.
So again, back to your community, to the software. So this is a monthly membership. How would one?
Yes, thank you.
Thought of it.
So it's software, right? So it's a subscription service. So software as a service, it's a SaaS platform. And so right now it's available at $297 a quarter or $997 a year to get access to all of our strategic planning tools. And that comes with our monthly call. And then what we're also weaving in, I'm so excited about this, is a private podcast feed where our users can ask a coaching question and then I answer that coaching question. So you will be able to kind of hear another person get coached on their numbers, their mindset, their margins, their strategy, whatever that might look like for you. And I think it's so helpful, like coming back to that conversation again, is it gives you new ideas. It gives you new perspectives. And so we're always looking at ways of just pouring into our community for these women who are they're huge visionaries, but they really need the financial systems and the structure to help make more possible in their businesses.
Sounds amazing. I do have a question that I feel like on some level is as much for me, if not more, than some of our listeners, but I'm sure you're aware of Profit First. It's popular among business owners.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast what you're creating. Certainly it sounds like there's some personal touch that isn't in.
Yeah, totally. I first found out about Profit First. I can't remember what year. I think it was maybe 2018, like the year that I had my son, actually, in that wild, chaotic year with business growth. I think Profit First is amazing. And Mike Michalowicz is such a smart guy and their community is great. Where we start to expand beyond Profit First is one, I think Profit First, it does a really great job for bigger companies, but I think for more micro companies, like people who are under $1 million in revenue, we actually need to have more because we're operating on thinner margins. And so that's why we have more financial needs that we focus on beyond Profit First. Specifically, we have a team allocation. So that's not grouped in with what Profit First would consider OPEX. We need to be able to see this margin clearly because this is the easiest one to get way too high. And anytime our team margin is too high, I can guarantee you're paying yourself less in order to float that increased cost. We also delineate your reinvestment expense because, again, we need to have a good finger on the pulse of how much we're reinvesting back into our businesses. We are in a beautiful marketplace where there's so many things to invest in. There's so many great people to hire. There's so many courses to take, so many programs to join. And if you're not careful, it is very easy to rack up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of debt. And so we need to understand how much should we be reinvesting into our businesses every single year. And so that's why we delineate that margin so you can see that clearly. And then we also have a give back. And I think that this is really, really intentional for just how we do business here at Dream Money. We believe so deeply in the power of giving back and how that not only impacts your ambition to earn more money because you can give more money, but it also just creates so much more meaning with your personal relationship with money too. And so I have found over the years, like people who are familiar with Profit First, this is going to be a very familiar system because it's an allocation system, just like, Profit First is, or Dave Ramsey's like envelope system. Like there's lots of different ones out there, but the unique edge that I would say that we add just creates a world of difference for our users, especially when they're under $1 million or even $3 million in yearly revenue.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful. And I do love the give back, which I have never seen.
Well, the interesting thing about the give back is if you go on my website, there is a 2% pledge. And that 2% pledge is our give back. And so what we recommend for all of our users is that they have a 2% giving allocation. And most people, when they first see that 2%, they're like, gosh, that doesn't sound like a lot, right? It sounds like such a small amount of the revenue that we're giving. But we have 2% for a couple of reasons. One, we've tested this with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small businesses of what is the margin that is sustainable for most businesses to maintain, where it's not disrupting the overall sustainability and profitability of all your other key financial needs. Because a lot of times women, they are such good givers. They can also overgive though too. And so we're really intentional with let's start at 2%. Let's do this consistently for a year. And if you want to increase it from there, you can, because you're going to have such a better understanding of how increasing a margin just by 1% has a huge impact on your cash flow. But the other thing about the 2% is it's not just your 2%. It's not just my 2%. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's 2%, which adds up to multiple millions of dollars every single year. And I think that's the other thing is that the 2% pledge is really around collective giving. And it's about joining your 2% with my 2% with hundreds of other people's 2%, because it's really easy for us to feel like it's on our shoulders to change the world on our own, which is impossible for any one person. But when we're all doing 2% together, it helps us shoulder the weight of changing the world together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Megan, you've touched on this a couple of times during our conversation, but I always like to, as we're getting close to the end, ask, how has your definition of financial success shifted?
Well, this is a good question. I think in the early stages, financial success really meant creating financial stability. Stability is really, really important when it comes to financial anxiety. And that was like probably one of the biggest lessons of 2018 is really understanding my attachment style with money because I'm not anxious and I'm not avoidant. I'm actually both, which is a very fun attachment style to have, by the way, because you're just oscillating between one or the other. But that's a combined type, right? And so with a combined type, it's really important to have stability because that's really like the foundation that allows us to start building nervous system safety and regulation. So I think in the early stages, financial success looked like stability. These days, financial success looks like overflow. And overflow means not only having enough to fund my basic needs, but also having money that doesn't have a job yet. And that is a really fun place to be and dream. And so what does overflow look like in this season? It's having, more than enough to invest. It has money to take a whimsy vacation if I want to do that. It's about being able to take my kids back to school shopping and not have to look at price tags for things, like those types of things. So I think the more clarity we have on like what does it look like when it's manifested in your real life, that's the stuff that's so important, because I think a lot of times we can be really vague, like, well, I just want more money. It's like, but
Yes.
get deeper, much deeper than that. More is not a goal. Like, so we need to really go into what are you really wanting to create for yourself here?
Exactly. Exactly. As we said earlier, more money is just more money. We imagine that it's going to be more satisfaction or more joy or more fun. But as you just said, Megan, unless you know that that's your intention for the money, all you're going to have is more money in the bank and just as much anxiety and avoidance. So as we close our conversation, is there anything else you'd like to make sure our listeners will know?
I just believe so strongly in women not only making more money, but having a positive relationship with money. And I think the thing that I love about my story so much is that not in a million years did I ever think that this would be my career path. But the reason that I love that I've landed here is because for the grand majority of my life, my relationship with money has been very complicated. And it's really only been within the past 10 years that has drastically changed. And so if it can change for me, I know it can change for others too. So no matter where you are or how money feels right now, just know that change is possible. You just got to do the work.
Thank you so much, Megan, for your time. I will put your contact information, your website. And I think you also noted that you have a podcast, of course.
Yes.
As well as a free resource. So I will post that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.